So what can you do right now? I want to give you 3 different strategies or 3 different things that you can do right now. These are in order of how difficult they are, or rather how easy they are. Unfortunately, for the first one, you have to be a homeowner. If you're lucky enough to own a house, then instead of having your mortgage with a regular bank that is owned by shareholders who then take a portion of your mortgage as profit, move your mortgage to a mutual bank or a cooperative bank. These are member-owned institutions, and they do not pay out dividends to non-members. They're not owned by the shareholders. That means that profits are not extracted to external shareholders. A mortgage is usually the biggest bill that people pay. It's the largest amount of money that leaves your bank account to somewhere else. And if you're with a regular bank, then a portion of your monthly mortgage payment is just going to make some rich people much richer. But if you switch to a credit union, then this doesn't happen. Being with a credit union is better than being with a regular bank because they are owned by the members. And when you join one, you become a member. What this means is that profits are not being extracted from you to external shareholders. Those shareholders are doing nothing. They're not contributing to society. They're just extracting wealth from your hard work. So if you don't want that to happen, then you move to a credit union. Transferring your mortgage over to a member-owned credit union is the single biggest strategic action you can take as an individual or as a family. It doesn't take that long either. You fill in some application forms and move your finances over to the credit union. The great thing is that many credit unions offer rates that are lower than the big banks. Whatever country you're in, look up credit unions or banking cooperatives or mutual banks or whatever the local term is for a member-owned financial institution and find one. Compare them, find a good deal, and put in an application. If millions of people do this, the big banks and shareholders who extract money from us will extract less money from us. Let's take our mortgages away from the banks. If you're a renter, I'm sorry, you're fucked. It's sad. Now I know this is a strategy for those lucky few who have a house, but if you're a renter, then look for a political party that looks after your interests and vote for them. Almost all other effective strategies either require collective action or some kind of sacrifice. Whereas this strategy of moving your mortgage over to a credit union will actually probably save you money. So it really is a win-win situation, and it's a great strategy that's low effort, and if millions of people do it, would have high impact. If you have a mortgage, do this. If you know friends and family who have mortgages, do this. And do it even if you have investment properties. Frankly, if we can just get all of our mortgages away from the big banks, this would be a massive step in the right direction. If enough people do this, it changes the ownership of the banking sector. It means that banks are owned by the members of the bank. And when you're a member of the bank, you're kind of like an owner of the bank. So shifting all of our mortgages over to credit unions is actually shifting the ownership of the banking sector from private capitalist ownership over to a kind of worker-owned model, although it's members of the banks. This creates a fundamental change in how banking operates, which is a big part of the economy. This is one of the most effective ways to take money away from the wealthy capitalist classes that are currently profiting off of you and everyone else who's got a mortgage with them. So if you have a mortgage with a regular bank that has shareholders and trades on the stock market, get out of there as quickly as you can and move over to a credit union or a cooperative bank. The second strategy is a little bit more work and unfortunately also probably requires you to have a house. The second strategy is to convert your garden to a permaculture garden. That means you're going to grow your own food and you're going to get some exercise doing it. The idea is to make every single plant in your garden edible or useful in some way. Now, I'm no expert in permaculture, but I want to be, and I'm slowly transitioning our garden to grow more food. Switching to permaculture is something that can be done gradually, or you can just do a section at a time, or you can do it entirely in one big makeover. Whatever works for you, whatever your scenario is. It's possible if you're a long-term renter and know your landlords well that you could ask them to change the garden over to permaculture. If this is not possible, you could also look into joining a community garden in your area. Converting your garden into a permaculture garden can also be about joining or building a community, something that is sadly lacking in most modern societies these days. So look up permaculture groups in your area and get involved. Often, they engage in mutual aid actions to convert gardens. This works by people giving their time. You would go and help someone set up their garden to be a permaculture garden on a weekend, and later, on another weekend, your new friends will help you set up a permaculture garden for yourself. People in the permaculture community will help you by providing seedlings and cuttings to get your garden started. And they'll help you by teaching you which plants go together and how to prepare them and what to do at different times of the year. Converting your garden to a permaculture garden will reduce your reliance on our corporate food systems. It will take some profits away from the lazy and greedy capitalist class that are not contributing to society. It will also save you money and provide healthy food while also helping to make you healthy because you're going to be getting some exercise in your new garden. You'll probably enjoy gardening if you don't already, and so you'll be doing something that will help to make you healthier, that will give you purpose, and end up making you happier, as well as you'll grow your own food and you'll be healthier from eating that food, and you can share it with your new community. So that's the second strategy, is convert your garden to a permaculture garden and grow your own food to reduce your reliance on food systems. One of the great things about permaculture gardens is that once they're set up, they don't take much work to maintain. If your garden currently is a monoculture lawn or a pretty boring scape of not much, and you switch to a permaculture food garden, you're going to find that it reverts to its own ecosystem, and it is something that won't require as much maintenance, and in my opinion, looks a lot more attractive than a regular garden with a simple lawn. Now, the third strategy is the most work, but potentially the most rewarding, at least financially. The third strategy to disrupt the capitalist system is to start your own worker-owned business, a cooperative. This strategy is not something you can necessarily do on your own. You do need to work with others. It's something you can get started with by looking for other people, but it's not as easy as the first two strategies because you do actually have to get together with other people. And this can make it harder. In my opinion, we need worker cooperatives that have a core goal of putting the dominant private capitalist enterprises that exploit their workers and don't give them a share in the profits out of business, to replace them in every sector with worker-owned enterprises. This is basically a revolution without violence, and it has the added benefit of providing the participants with a livelihood and a community along the way. So it is a self-reinforcing strategy because you'll be earning a living while changing society. It's very important that the cooperative does not borrow money. If money is needed to be borrowed, then this money should be borrowed by each individual as an individual. This is very important because you do not want the worker cooperative to be burdened by debt. This, of course, makes it slightly more risky as an enterprise for each individual. But remember, each individual is an owner of the enterprise, which makes their employment much more secure. The main purpose for the cooperative to not take on any debt is it will make the enterprise stronger and less vulnerable. It will make it more efficient and better able to compete. For-profit private enterprises often have large amounts of debt and they're paying large interest payments. So if you're competing against that kind of an enterprise and you don't have debt, you're more competitive. And remember, the goal is to put private capitalist enterprises that are extracting profits from their workers out of business. Having no debt will reduce the operating costs of the cooperative and enable it to compete better with the regular for-profit enterprises. For-profit corporations these days are often leveraged to the hilt with debt, and this is a vulnerability for them. They have to use a large portion of their revenues to pay interest payments, and you do not want to have the workers' cooperative stuck in the same situation. So it must be a rule that the organization does not take on debt as an organization. This is very important, and it's more important in the long term because we don't know what fluctuations in interest rates are going to do. If a cooperative can compete against capitalist corporations that have huge amounts of debt, then the cooperative will be in a much stronger position than its capitalist competitors. This will make it less vulnerable to fluctuating interest rates, and it will support the long-term survival and resilience of the cooperative enterprise. An advantage of cooperatives is that they are owned by the workers, which means the workers share in decision-making. Collective decision-making, when done properly, usually produces better quality decisions than having single individuals make decisions. They're better because many perspectives are considered before the decision is made. They may take longer to make a decision, but in a business setting, you want strategic and long-term thinking, which usually shouldn't be done quickly. The decision-making structure needs to be set up to avoid gridlock and indecision that can come with making collective decisions. So you need structures and systems in place to make sure your decision-making follows rules and everybody is clear about how to work together to reach good decisions. There are a lot of resources on the internet that can help with this. But if you can get the decision-making structures right, this brings about another massive advantage for worker cooperatives. And that is, you don't have to have an overpaid CEO sucking up the revenue that the enterprise makes. If worker cooperatives don't have to pay overpriced CEOs and executive teams, they can instead reinvest the money in the enterprise or pay workers fair wages to make the workers more productive, or invest in machinery and capital that will make the workers more productive. So the workers make decisions together. This reduces the need for expensive executive teams, and it frees up more money and revenue to reinvest in the business, which helps make the cooperative more competitive against firms that have overpaid executive teams and don't listen to their employees, who often have great ideas how to innovate and make the business more effective and efficient. The savings from not having an overpaid CEO can instead be reinvested in expanding the business, which is part of the goal of putting capitalist firms out of business themselves. It can also be reinvested in improving productivity by buying machinery that's necessary, not having to pay an expensive overpriced CEO, and instead being able to pay your workers a better wage. They won't leave the company as often, and you'll retain all their skills and knowledge, and this will have a massive advantage in terms of reducing costs, because when you have a high turnover, high churn rate in your employees, this is very expensive and disruptive for business. But a worker cooperative, where the workers are paid a fair wage, is less likely to have that problem. This provides yet another advantage to worker cooperatives as co-owners of the business. With ownership of its decisions, the workers will tend to be more motivated to see the business succeed because they are also the owners of the business and stand to benefit if the business does well, unlike in capitalist companies that don't necessarily reward workers for their hard work as much as they deserve. So a successful cooperative should be able to poach employees away from capitalist firms and gradually make them owners as well as the business expands. A successful cooperative would therefore be able to attract better skills as it succeeded and grew. This would further weaken the capitalist competition. Worker owners are more likely to put in the extra effort, and they're more likely to look for innovative ways to make cost savings, to improve products, and to improve processes that will save the firm money because they're the owners, and now they have an incentive to find these efficiencies. And every single one of the workers is doing this, looking for efficiencies, looking for innovations, and working harder because they're owners of the business. So when a business like that goes up against a demoralized enterprise that has high churn rates and overpaid CEOs where the workers are dissatisfied, it has a big advantage. Morale matters in wars, even if those wars are economic. One final note is that the structure, the legal corporate structure of your cooperative has to be set up for defense. Because if the workers' cooperative becomes very successful, expanding and taking market share from for-profit enterprises, those capitalist enterprises are going to amass teams of lawyers to come after the workers' cooperative with whatever excuse they can wrestle up. From the very beginning, your worker cooperative has to be set up anticipating attacks like this. The legal structures have to be carefully set up to defend the workers, to defend the enterprise, and to make sure that when these attacks come, you're ready. In this economic war, you have to build your defenses in advance. So you'll want to consult some good lawyers and some good accountants to help you set up a good organizational structure. It will be different depending on your industry, but put a considerable amount of thought into this before you get started. So good luck. I hope that moving your mortgage over to a credit union goes well, if that's something you can do. Or I hope that the effort that goes into your new permaculture garden is rewarding. And I hope that if you start a worker-owned enterprise, that it goes well and you're successful and expand beyond your wildest dreams to put some capitalist firms out of business. Let me know if you have any other strategies. And of course, if these fail, there's always revolution.